Welcome. Thank you for joining the Federal Program Compliance Division's Program Monitoring Validation session. And this one is for the ESA Private Nonprofit Schools, PNP Equitable Services, regarding the school system's documented PNP Equitable Services amounts for program monitoring validation. This session will only share a few of the selected requirements that are being validated by TEA. The school system must have all requirements related to PMP Equitable Services on file and readily available in the event of an audit request. This presentation is intended solely to provide general information and guidance to Texas school systems, education service centers, nonprofit subgrantees, and participating private schools receiving equitable services. The content in this presentation reflects the Texas Education Agency's current understanding of statute and applicable federal guidance. The content of this presentation is subject to change as a result of future guidance and/or other updates provided by federal agencies within regulatory oversight of these programs. This presentation does not constitute legal advice, and entities are therefore advised to seek legal counsel regarding the information and guidance provided in this presentation before acting upon the information provided. Artificial intelligence disclaimer. Recording or use of artificial intelligence. The Texas Education Agency, or TEA, does not permit third-party recording or the use of artificial intelligence, AI, summary services during its grants-related trainings. Attendees of the TEA's grants-related trainings may not use AI services, language models, applications, interfaces, or assistants to attend, review, or record the trainings. TEA further prohibits any person or entity from using the information included in its grants-related trainings to train AI technologies. Any attendees of TEA's grant-related trainings who violate this prohibition may be removed from the trainings and may be barred from attending future grants-related trainings. Please note that documentation for viral meetings is an acceptable form of documentation. Given the increase of virtual meeting environments, participant rosters that include the meeting title, meeting date, and stakeholder names and roles would be acceptable substitutes for the more traditional sign-in sheets. This eliminates the need of a participant signature. Documentation requested. Take note of these items. Documenting overall compliance for a program requirement may require several forms of documentation to be maintained locally and available upon request by TEA and/or an auditor. To ensure overall compliance with program requirements, school systems should refer to the program guide and/or other program-related resources that reference the multiple forms of documentation required to be maintained locally. The documentation requested for submission during the validation process may not include all forms of documentation that are required to be maintained locally. 1117 provides a statutory requirement for Title I Part A Equitable Services amounts. As you can see, expenditures for those services and other benefits to eligible private school children shall be equal to the proportion of funds allocated to participating school attendance areas, and it is based on the number of children from low-income families who attend private schools. The proportional share of funds shall be determined based on the total amount of funds received by the school system under its part prior to any allowable expenditures or transfers by the school system. The ESA Section 8501 and Code of Federal Regulations, Title 34, Section 299, provides the statutory requirements for the Title I Part C, Migrant Program, Title II Part 8, Title III Part A, English Learners and Immigrants, Title IV Part A, and Title IV Part B, which is the 21st Century Competitive Grant, Equitable Service Amounts. In addition, there are program-specific provisions and assurances that are listed in the ESA Consolidated Application for the year. These specific program assurances that are related to Title I Part A program are the size and scope of the equitable services to be provided to eligible private school children, the proportion of funds that is allocated for such services, and how that proportion of funds is determined. In addition, the school system assures it will keep documentation of program descriptions, allowable activities, and expenditures locally and make them readily available upon TEA's request. All applicable private nonprofit requirements in sections 1117, which is for Title I Part A, and section 8501, which is for the Title VIII programs. TEA may request a description of services and use of funds documentation later through compliance reports or other TEA reports. Assurances are similar that are related to the Title VIII programs. The school system will comply with the uniform provisions for providing services to private schools specified in the statute. And you can read more about that in the ESA statute sections 8501 through 8401. The school system documented the PNP Equitable Service amounts used and provided a detailed explanation of those amounts provided to the private nonprofit school officials for all applicable participating programs. This is the language that is on the compliance report for the PNP schedule, which is PR 3099. And so it is one of the compliance self-check items in which the school system must indicate yes or no that they did document the equitable services used and provided a detailed explanation of those amounts to the private school officials. It is very important that the school system keeps documentation of those consultation meetings where they are explaining the equitable service amounts for services and how they arrive to that amount for all of the programs in which a private school is participating. So if you have that documented and dated with who was in attendance. You have agendas, you have meeting notes where you discussed equitable service amounts. That is the documentation that a school system must keep on file. The LEA should submit specific documentation which provides evidence it shared the applicable title program equitable service amounts with participating PMP school officials during consultation. The acceptable evidence would include documentation that the school system informed PMP school officials of the fiscal requirements that include equitable service amounts for one private school campus. And so the school system has the flexibility in determining which one private school campus it will send documentation for regarding this particular requirement. A few examples for this documentation could include agendas, consultation meeting notes, um, program summaries, timeline of professional development and travel, PMP purchase order requests for equitable services, a calendar of those program services with equitable service amounts, or any other documentation that is auditable and would meet the requirement of written explanation of the PNP Equitable Services amount. There are a few common findings that occur every year regarding program monitoring validations. And for PNP Equitable Service amounts, one of the main ones is that auditable documentation is not from the requested year. Please make sure that you are submitting documentation that was asked for and that was specific, and that it also included the year or the date of that uh, time that you had with the private school in explaining and providing equitable service amounts for the programs. In order to ensure that the school system has a better chance at meeting TEA's requirements for the documentation, I highly suggest that you contact your local ESC Education Service Center staff and ask them to review your documents. Please let them review before you submit to TEA. They can help you with ensuring that you have the correct documentation that we're asking for, that your documentation is dated, your documentation has names of those parties that were involved with the discussion. It has the written documentation of the school system's equitable services amounts. They can review all that documentation and let you know, is it too little information? Does it not give enough detail? Or is it too much information and you should not submit it in that format to TEA? So please share your documentation before you submit with the local ESC staff member. Now I'd like to share a few examples of resources and support. There are program monitoring validations process online resources. For example, there are program monitoring validation process handbooks, instructions for how to submit documentation through the work app. There's a training video, and there's also the training slides for this particular training. Program specific resources are available under the guidance documents for each program and requirement, as well as those videos and training slides that are program specific. And you may see all of the program resources are available by clicking on the ESA Program Monitoring Validations webpage link at the bottom of this presentation. Our division does have lots of documentation available that actually provides guidance and instructions for the school systems. It can be located on our ESA Program Monitoring Validations webpage. And on that webpage, you will find a guidance document that is completely devoted to the equitable service amounts requirement. It gives you a lot more details. You also have access to the training slides and the training video link. So please be sure to review all of that information before you submit any documentation through the work app to TEA. School systems may also receive support from their local education service center as a complimentary technical assistance and training service. You may find the ESC contacts for each regional center on the TEA Title IV Part A webpage. Of just a few of the specifics Education Service Center ESA basic services that are provided free of charge to the school systems to ensure that it is meeting compliance when it comes to the program monitoring validations. And so the ESC staff, they are available to help you with the equitable service requirements under Title I Part A and Title 8 to assist the school system in their development and all the way through the submission process for the consolidated grant application, which is the PS 3099 private school schedule, and the PR 3099, which is the consolidated compliance report schedule. And so they are there ready and available to help you because they receive a grant to provide those services across the state. And also, they are also there to help those school systems as they work to submit documentation for the PMP Equitable Services Program monitoring validations. So please use those ESCs and their services to ensure that you are actually submitting documentation that hopefully is going to help you to meet compliance. Thank you for attending this virtual training session. If you have questions, please let me know. Have a wonderful day.